Hello children, today we shall talk about the new topics from democratic politics, and the name of the topic is power sharing. So my dear children, in previous year itself or in class 9 itself, we have learned about the concept of democracy. So in modern era, most of the countries, they are preferring the democratic structures of governance, because democratic structures of government which gives equal importance to equality, importance to freedom, and at the same time it gives dignity to the citizens. That is why at presently 120 countries are following the systems of democratic governance. So my dear children, in these chapters we shall be learning in details how the democratic government is functioning, how the democratic government is sharing its power with different organs of the government. So before that, my dear children, I would like to give you the brief definitions of democracy. What is called democracy? Democracy is a system of governance in which the rulers are elected by the peoples. So here, who is having powers to select the representatives? Here, the rulers are elected by the peoples. The rulers as well as the representatives are elected by the peoples, because the peoples has power to choose the representatives. Peoples have freedom to choose the representatives. Peoples have equality, peoples have freedom, peoples have dignity, because it is the basic structures of democracy. And my dear children, according to Abraham Lincoln, we see his definitions that democracy is the government of the peoples. It is for the peoples as well as by the peoples. So here we understood that democratic structures of government which gives more important to peoples, which gives more important to citizens. So dear children, here in this democratic structures of government, already we have understood that the power is not resting in one organs of the government. And how the government is functioning, there is a distribution of power. The power sharing is there among the different organs of the government. Because in dictatorship, the power is resting in one particular individuals, but in democratic systems of government, we see the sharing of power. And it is promoting the intelligent sharing of power between the different organs of the government, and those are such as the legislatures, the executives, as well as the judiciary. So these are the three major organs of the government, and these three major organs of the government who are working effectively to bring success among the citizens. So my dear children, here we shall be learning that how the power sharing is happened in the nations, and if the power sharing is not happened in the society, what are the tensions, what are the conflict, what are the difficulties which is going to happen in the society. And we shall be learning in details by seeing the relevant stories of Belgium and Sri Lanka. So dear children, here the case of Belgium as well as the case of Sri Lanka is entirely different, because here we see the different ethnic compositions in Belgium and Sri Lanka, and due to these different ethnic compositions, we see the dominations of the majority community in Belgium as well as in Sri Lanka. And when we see the dominations of the majority communities over the minority, which leads to have tensions in the society, which leads to civil war, which leads to conflict in the society. That is why the democratic structures which gives more importance to power sharing. Why power sharing is desirable here? If we are not sharing power with the different societies, with the different organs of the government, then there will be conflict in the society. There will be different kind of tensions in the society. If we are not sharing power, then there will be tensions, there will be fighting, there will be conflict. That is why power sharing is very, very important in democratic society. If we are not sharing power with the different organs of the government, different societies, then there will be always tensions, there will be fighting, there will not be equality, there will not be freedom, there will not be dignity in the society. So see, as we see the case stories of Belgium and Sri Lanka, the equality was not there. That is the reasons there was conflict, there was tensions. That is why we need to understand that if we are sharing power, there will not be conflict in the society. Why? Because power sharing is the spirit of democracy. So, dear children, in order to understand the importance of power sharing, let us try to understand the background of the Belgium and Sri Lanka. So, this Belgium is a very small country in Europe. It is having the border lines between France, Germany, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and the populations of Belgium is 1 crore. It is a very smaller state like Haryana, and the ethnic compositions of Belgium is very complex here. So here we see the country's total populations, in which 59% of people who are living in Flemish regions, they speak the Dutch languages, and the 40% of people who are living in Wallonia regions who speak the French languages. So dear children, here the remaining 1% of peoples are having the influences of Germany, and they speak 1% of Germany language. But we see the capital of Brussels, which is comprising 80% of peoples who are French speaking peoples, while the 20% peoples are Dutch speaking peoples. So here what we see here is in Belgium the minority French peoples who are very rich and very powerful, but the Dutch communities who got the educations later as well as the economic benefits later in the society. So what was the situations and what was the tensions we see here in 1950s and 1960s, my dear children? We see the tensions between these two communities, which was very acute in Brussels. And what was the tensions? Both community, the French speaking community as well as the Dutch speaking community, both were having both were trying to have control in the society, especially in Brussels. Both they wanted to have control over the capital cities, because here the majority peoples, they do not want to live under the control of minority, and here the minority peoples who has more populations in Brussels, they wanted to have control over the Brussels, which is the capital cities of Belgium. So my dear children, when there was a tension which arises between this Dutch speaking community as well as the French speaking community, the problem was very, very acute in Belgium. It was becoming very, very dangerous in Brussels. These two communities, they were fighting to have dominations over each other. So my dear children, here we see that what we see the outcomes. The outcome is there is a tensions between the two communities, because two communities, they are not having acceptance to each other, rather than they want to have dominations over each other, and when they wanted to have dominations over each other, it led to the conflict between these two communities in Belgium. And we see the similar case in Sri Lanka. Let us discuss about the situations of Sri Lanka. So dear children, let us compare with another countries, that is Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is an island where the population is around 2 crore. So my dear children, in Sri Lanka we see the diverse populations where the majority social groups are Sinhala. Apart from that, we see the Tamil speaking peoples who are 18%, and among the Tamil speaking peoples there are 2 subgroups. They are such as Sri Lanka Tamils who are 13%, and the Sri Lanka Tamils are in the northeast of the country. So dear children, most of the Sinhala speaking communities are following Buddhist religion. Apart from that, we see most of the Tamils who are Hindus as well as Muslims, and there are 7% of Christians who are both Sinhala as well as Tamil. So in Sri Lanka, we see the Sinhala communities who are having bigger majority in the nations, and since they are having bigger majority in the nations, they could impose its will on the entire nations. So dear children, here we see that in Sri Lanka the majority communities are Sinhala community. Since they are the majority peoples in the society, so they could impose their entire will on the nations, and the same thing was happened in Sri Lanka. So dear children, here the Sinhala community, being the majority groups in the society, they started following the concepts of majoritarianisms, because they do not want to have any kind of dominations. They do not want to have acceptance to each other, rather than what they did, they followed the concepts of majority, because the Sinhala peoples, the Sinhala community, they said that they do not want to share their power, they do not want to share their powers with each other, rather than they want to adopt the concepts of majoritarianism. So my dear children, here in this videos lectures we had discussed about Belgium and Sri Lanka. In Belgium also we have discussed that there is a issues between majority, and in Sri Lanka also we see the concepts of majoritarianism. So in Belgium, the Dutch speaking peoples who are becoming the majority in the entire nations, but there is a issues in Brussels. The same things we see in Sri Lanka. There is a Sinhala community who are majority in the society, so they want to impose the concepts of majority in the society. Thank you so much for listening to me.